Hey everyone, I'm Kevin with Victory 4x4. In today's video, we're going to be installing our Blitz front bumper on our 2023 Tundra TRD Pro. So we'll start things off with some disassembly, specifically getting the grille and front fascia bumper assembly off of the vehicle. For that, we're going to begin with a few bolts here up top, just underneath the hood. For this, you're going to need a 10mm socket, and we're going to be removing these 4 bolts across here, holding the top of the grille into the core support. Then off to each side of the grille, you're going to have 2 of these electrical connections that need to be unplugged. With each of these, there's just a little tab you'll need to press in, and then you should be able to simply pull and disconnect the plug. This one's on the driver's side. There will be 2 more over on the passenger side. Then just behind those 2 connections, you're going to have 1 clip that needs to be removed here. You can use a clip removal tool or simply a flat screwdriver to pop the center of that up, and then the entire clip should just pull free. And then be sure to go do that same thing on the other side. Now we can reach down from the top and in behind the grille here, and what you're looking for are these 2 brace brackets, one here on the driver's side, and then you'll have a similar bracket over on the passenger side. Using a 10mm socket, you can remove the 2 bolts holding each bracket in place. Now moving down underneath the front of the truck, you're going to have 4 more screws that run across the center here that need to be removed. These again will use your 10mm socket. Now I do just want to point out while we're down here that we are working on a TRD Pro at the moment, so this step may vary just a little bit depending on how your Tundra is optioned and specifically whether or not it's equipped with an active electric front air dam. Then moving out further toward the wheel openings, you're going to have 2 screws on each side that need to be removed. Then continuing out into these wheel openings, there's going to be 5 screws along here, with the 5th being kind of tucked up in here that need to be removed. And then be sure to go do that same thing over on the other side. Now with the screws removed, we're going to be popping this fender flare out. It's got a couple retainers back behind here, so you just want to pop those free and leave the remainder of the flare up on the truck. And if you're going to use any sort of pry tool here, make sure it's something like this plastic one I have so that you're not damaging the paint out here on the bumper. So this is all the farther you really want to go with that. We're just popping the first 3 clips out, and then you do have 1 more wire harness connection going to this front marker light that needs to be unplugged. Much like the ones up behind the grill, this is just a small thumb tab and then pull straight back. Now with that out, you can kind of see it's just a small 2-wire connection there, and you can just kind of let that hang for now. With that now unplugged, you can kind of see it's just a smaller 2-wire connector, and this is going to need to be fed back through the hole here in the fascia so that this can be kept on the truck side as this fascia is removed. You're also going to need to kind of peel back the inner fender here and basically just trace that harness up to its first retaining clip here on the back side of the fascia, and that'll be popped out with a panel tool or a flat screwdriver. This next step is going to be to remove the front fascia from its retainer here just in front of the fender, and at this point, once you get both sides removed, the whole front bumper and grille assembly will be free to kind of come off or fall off the truck, so you want to make sure you have an extra set of hands here kind of hanging on to the other side so that doesn't happen. You'll just kind of need to reach in behind the flare here. You can kind of pull back on the fascia and that'll start allowing it to pop out off of the retainer here. And then you'll just work your way up around this front edge here, kind of freeing it up and just making sure that you're not dragging it along the flare or the headlight here. With everything disconnected, we're now going to grab a hold of kind of the grill and the bumper up here, pull the whole thing straight out, and go set it over on the bench. With the bumper and fascia assembly removed from the vehicle, we can now remove this front aluminum crash bar assembly. For that, it's going to be 4 bolts per side. You're going to have 2 up top here, as well as these 2 down here, and those will come out with a 17mm socket. Now for the outermost bolts up top here, you may need to grab a ratcheting wrench or even just a ratchet with a shallow socket to get to these underneath this air inlet. And then you just want to be sure that you're supporting this crash bar before you remove the last couple bolts, because it will then be free to drop away from the vehicle. Now that we have this fascia assembly off of the vehicle, we're going to be working to remove this lower black plastic section here, which in turn will also cause us to have to at least partially remove these little end caps out here just outside of that. Those we're all going to have to work from the back side, kind of disconnecting some clips and pulling those free. So I'll flip this over and walk you through that now. So you can start off by freeing up those little outer end caps. For that, there's going to be several of these tabs inside of here, and the way they release is simply pulling the locking tab there and then pushing out on the end cap itself. You're going to kind of have to maintain pressure on that while you work your way around to each individual tab and get those freed up here in the back of the bumper. So then as you work your way around and get those clips freed up, you should wind up with something about like this, which should leave you enough room that you can manipulate the center panel out from behind these. And then to remove the center section, it's going to be a very similar process. Again, just working our way around the outside perimeter, releasing all the clips. The only difference being that these lower clips are just a touch different than the uppers. The uppers are just like those outer caps. These lowers, you're just going to have to push in on a tab that locks that into place, again while pulling out on this outer portion that we're trying to remove, and again maintaining pressure on that as you work your way across. Once you have all of the clips removed across the center, you should just have to kind of gently push out on those outer trim sections, and this should drop free. Now at this point, this section can be discarded unless you have any reason that you expect to go back to stock later on, and we'll have just a little bit of modification to do down here on the remaining fascia. So on here we're going to have 3 cuts to make, the first of which being right here kind of at the top of this center rib. For that, we're just going to cut straight across, basically connecting this line. I'm just going to lay out a piece of tape across here as a guide and kind of a visual reference so you can kind of see what we're looking to do there. Now obviously there's a lot of different tools you can use to cut this plastic. I just threw on a set of safety glasses and grabbed our grinder with a cutoff disc, and we're basically just following our line straight across here. Now I will point out this should be far enough back out of the way, but if you happen to grab a Sawzall or something there, you want to make sure you're looking out for the wire harness back here and not causing any damage to that. Next we'll make 2 mirrored cuts, one on each end of this opening. For that I did grab a narrower fine line tape just to kind of help trace this edge. But basically what we're going to do here is follow this edge and carry it all the way down to the back end of our fascia, keeping that as straight as possible all the way out here to the end. Now again, with our grinder, we're going to be cutting toward the inside of our tape line here. And then with this cut made, we can kind of clean up our edge and go repeat the same process on the other side. So after you've made all 3 cuts, you should have a piece that looks about like this that you've removed, and now a nice clean opening where your new bumper will be installed. Now we can reinstall both of these outer caps and get the fascia reinstalled onto the vehicle. Now the reassembly is basically just the reversal of how you took this out earlier. You just want to be sure as you're getting this all back into place that you're getting it up high enough that it's popping into these retainers so that everything's aligned properly, and just use caution so you're not scratching up the headlight here or the bumper cover with the inside edge of this flare. After that, just make sure that you get your wire harness routed properly back through the hole here in the fascia and reconnected into this marker light before snapping the flare back into place. Then we can reinstall the clips and reconnect our wire harness up here. And again, do the same thing on the other side. Following that, you can tighten the 4 screws across the top. And then reinstall and tighten the hardware for those 2 braces down behind the grille. And lastly, reinstall your hardware out here in the wheel opening and along the bottom edge of the bumper. Now at this point, we can grab our bumper and get our accessories installed. We're going to start off with our front light bar trim bezel. This is going to be easiest to install now before the light bar is in place. So you'll grab the trim bezel, obviously, along with a couple of the provided black 1/4 20 button heads and serrated flange nuts. You can start off just out in one of the corners, getting this lined up. You can even just hang it on 2 of them, just to kind of locate it in place as you get the rest of your hardware started. After you have all 6 of those started in place, you can grab a 5/32 hex driver or Allen wrench and tighten them up. Now here on the inside of the bumper, you can install your 20-inch light bar using the 2 slotted mounting tabs you see here, along with the light manufacturer's mounting hardware. And once you've properly angled your light to at least set a rough height adjustment here, you can tighten up that light mounting hardware. With that light bar tight, you can move on to installing both your winch and winch fair lead. So the winch itself is obviously going to nest down into the winch mounting tray here and use the slotted mounting holes in the bottom. Fair lead will mount on the face of the bumper and install using these holes. And then your actual winch mounting hardware will run from the bottom up into the recess cutouts down here on the bottom of the bumper. So in this case, we're dropping in a Warn Xeon 10S. After we have the winch down here in the winch tray, it's just a matter of lining things up with those bottom slots and using the Warren provided hardware to secure it in place. Now, I will point out that I am going to leave this just a little bit loose so that we have some adjustment to slide this front to rear during the final installation. Now that we have all of our accessories in place, I've kind of tucked the wiring just out of the way for now, and we can begin installing this onto the vehicle. Since our vehicle's in a hoist, we're going to throw this on our transmission jack to help lift it up into place. If you guys are doing this on the ground in your driveway, you can grab a friend to help you out and even a floor jack, and it'll kind of accomplish the same thing. Now, while these mounts are still exposed and visible, we wanted to give you a quick rundown on the hardware you'll be using to secure the bumper to the truck. So in these two lower holes on each mounting bracket, you'll be reusing factory bolts along with our provided washers. This washer is going to go in between our bumper and the factory frame mount, and then you'll simply thread those factory bolts back in. Then moving up to the next set of mounting holes up here, you'll be using the provided 7/16 hex bolt, washer, and flange locking nut. This bolt's going to run from the back side of the mount forward, and you'll install the nut on the front side of the bumper here. And then using that same hardware combination, you'll install the bolt from the top down in these upper mounting locations with the nut, of course, here on the bottom. As for the threaded factory studs you see here, that's just going to be used as an alignment pin, so just watch out for that as you're getting the bumper in place and make sure you're lined up with it before trying to push back. So now that you know where all your hardware is going to be used and located, it's just a matter of getting this bumper jacked up into place here on the truck. As you're going up, just make sure that you're watching your winch, your light, anything back there to make sure that you have proper clearance between those accessories and any of the factory hoses and components behind this grill. And then from there, the only other area of possible concern would be the painted surfaces out here. So if your jack's not quite as stable and secure as this, or if you're uncomfortable in any way, just grab some tape, mask all that stuff off until you get the bumper actually secured into position, and then you can peel that back out of the way. Right here you can see, looking kind of from the back of the mount, that factory bolt going through the bumper, and then we're just going to slip that washer up into place and get each of these started. Make sure to do all 4 of these before you tighten this in any further so that you have that accessibility. Then you can move up here to install that first 7/16 hex bolt and nut. And then you can follow that up with the remaining top-down mounting hardware. So after you have all this hardware loosely in place, you can step back out in front of your truck and make sure the bumper is centered and adjust as needed before you begin to tighten things up here. We'll start down here with the bottom factory bolts. Those you'll just need a 17mm socket or wrench. In this case, I'm using a flex head ratcheting wrench that allows me pretty good access here to get these tightened. Once you've done that, we'll start down here with these factory bolts and a 17mm wrench. I'm using a flex head ratchet wrench here, which gives us pretty good access to tighten these. As for the inside one here and pretty much all the way up the mount, you'll need to reach through the front access cutouts here in the front of the bumper, and that should let you get in here to tighten those. Once you have all those factory bolts tight on the bottom, you'll move up to that provided hex hardware. You'll need a 5/8 wrench up here, and then there is quite a bit of slot adjustability in these, so if you're encountering any interference between those 2 bolts, go ahead and loosen them up, slide them around as needed, and then tighten them in place. After you have all of your bumper mounting hardware tight, you'll want to be sure to come back and tighten up your winch mounting bolts if you haven't done so already, and then you can get your winch and your light wired in according to those manufacturer specs, along with your fair lead and hook installed. Once you've done all that, your installation is complete. So if you guys have any questions at all about this install or anything else we offer here at Victory 4x4, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can always send us an email at info@victory4x4.com or just give us a call at 269-459-8447.